Hi there, I'm Karl Latham. I am a drummer in the New York City area, and I am making a tape today to talk to you about the late great Gary Chester and his book, The New Breed, and Gary's teaching method. I've stayed in contact with Gary's daughter, Katrina, who's my friend over many years now, and she made an inquiry to some of Gary's students, those of us that studied directly with Gary, to try to explain Gary's method, because she's had a lot of people reach out to her inquiring about what the teaching method is about, and I guess she felt best would be for us to try to explain from our own personal experiences what it was like studying with Gary. Let me talk about what brought me to Gary. I was a musician my whole life. I was in all state bands in New Jersey. I studied at Rutgers. I studied at Berklee College of Music with Gary Chafee. I went on to take second place in the Carmen de Pizza National Drum Battle in 1983. There were 7,000 plus drummers in it. And I had a lot of technical ability, and I was playing in a bunch of bands and a lot of different gigs in the New York City area in the mid-'80s. And I noticed that a lot of the great players in the scene, I would talk to them after the gigs, and I found out they had all studied with Gary. And one of my former students who was attending Berklee went to study with Gary for a year. I guess he went back and forth, and I saw such a huge improvement with him. I just finally had to go see what it was all about. So studying with Gary was totally different than any other teacher I ever studied with. It was a really unique experience. We didn't talk a single moment about, he wouldn't even let me bring up technique other than to keep my feet down on the pedals. It was really much more about music and musicianship and musicality and awareness, and kind of like a zen of drumming, and also about a zen of being a human. It was much more beyond just like moving your hands and feet. It was really about awareness and self-awareness, and it completely changed my skill set. After studying with Gary, I would say within a year of studying with Gary, I had a day gig at the time. I left my day gig. I went to work with an artist on RCA, and I became a pro drummer ever since. And from those experiences with Gary, I've been able to learn a lot of different styles of music. I've played with groundbreaking artists in all kinds of different styles. I worked with Johnny Winter in blues, and I worked with Bernie Worrell in funk, and with the great Mark Egan, and an endless list of John Lee, the Dizzy Gillespie alumni musicians, and just an endless list of musicians around the world in different styles of music. And I attribute the ability, the skills I acquired when I studied with Gary to really be super beneficial to me in working with all these other musicians. So to talk about Gary's method, I would like to just demonstrate something that he would show us, that you would have an ostinato in one foot, and you would have an ostinato in your hands, and what you play in your bass drum would be, oops, my power keeps going in and out. What I would play in my bass drum would maybe perhaps represent a bass line that a bass player might play. So a typical bass line could be like, continued. We could add a part between our hi-hat and our ride cymbal, or another hi-hat or something that he would call waka chuck, other people might call 1EN. So to add to that, what I would do is I made a copy of a page two pages from The New Breed. I would play these rhythms, which could represent a melody, they could represent horn hits, they could represent something maybe in a rhythm guitar player's part or some other rhythmic part. And what you would do is you would sing all of your different parts, which would make you super aware of everything you were playing and your balance of sound. And you would play ambidextrously. So if I took that same bass line, that boom, 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 and I added the waka chuck, I would play with a click track typically. If I added this page to it, this could represent a song to me, which would be perhaps the horn hits. So I'm going to sing the melody, I'll call them the horn hits for now, while I play the bass part, and I play a part with my hands, and then I'm going to play that. So that's the first line of that, what I think of as a song. And you could work on that for a while. And Gary, I went back to Gary after a week of practicing that, and I became fairly proficient. He said, okay, well, what about when we go to the chorus? Maybe we want to move that bass part up to the snare, because now the horns are playing that part, and now you want to hit the kicks with your bass drum. So the whole world would invert. So I'd move the rhythm I had previously played in the bass drum and play it in the snare, bass on snare. We could maybe add more action to it. Say, we'll fill in around it. Then you could say, oh, why don't we, fill around that in a different manner? We'll fill between your hands. That would work out cool. And Gary could say, okay, well, let's move it back down to the bottom, but we'll still keep filling around the line. So now we're going to fill around the bass line, and it's back into bass. So those are some basic ideas of what you could do with the new breed. Gary would also do crazy stuff like have you, you would play the rest around the melody part in your left foot in a hi-hat, and you could even sing those parts, which you make really highly aware of. It was completely crazy. You'd be playing some rhythms, in the front part of your brain, and you'd be totally concentrating on playing a melody somewhere, but then you'd have to sing the rest that went around the melody, which was kind of nutty. And he would have you, he would just throw all kinds of curveballs at you. I remember one time I was in a lesson and I was playing one of these really, focused, concentrated systems. And I just, I had it down. And I just kept feeling like the time was tugging, like I was dragging, just infinitesimally dragging. And after about 90 seconds of this, I looked up and he had this evil grin on his face. And what he'd been doing is he had a little analog old metronome, and he was just slowly turning the dial. So maybe we'd gone up 4 or 5 clicks over like a minute and a half. And I just yelled at him. I think I cursed at him, But that's the type of stuff he would do to you. He always kept you on your toes. You would practice everything from super slow to as fast as relaxed and comfortable and still grooving. And it was a really unique system. And what it did was enable me to learn to acquire a lot of different styles of music and to learn coordinations. If I needed to play clave in my foot, or if I needed to really work on playing my samba pattern and placing all the accents in the right place and layering everything in balance of sound. And any style of music I played in, even I play a lot of kind of crazy modern jazz. And I played one piece with an artist where he wanted 4/4 in one limb, and the melody was written in 3/2, and I was kind of implying 3/4 and 6/8 at the same time across all my limbs, and he wanted to have it so that the soloist could choose any of those rhythms, and I could flow into like playing in 4 or playing in 3/2 or playing in 6, and they would be in different parts of my body. And I actually worked out a system where I would first read in 4/4 time, but with 6/8 rhythms and 3 happening, and sing the stuff and play along and use different reading methods that would be in 4/4. Then I would flip it and read in 3/4 and still sing the things that was in 3/4. And by the end, I had really control over this really complicated and complex rhythm. It was a true polyrhythm that I could play really fluently just because I applied the type of concepts that I learned with Gary. So I hope this is helpful in some way. I do teach Gary's method. I still continue to teach it I teach at 3 different colleges in New Jersey, and I teach it with my students in my private practice. So I hope this is useful to someone, and I encourage anyone that's into it to explore studying the new breed, and I urge you to try to find someone that studied with Gary, or some student of Gary's, or someone at least to study with a student of Gary's, so that you can really immerse yourself in what Gary's method was and what his philosophy was about life and music.